Jules here with the Luminous Minds Project. Thanks so much and welcome to the Luminous Minds Project. I am so excited. It's October and it's Learning Disability Awareness Month. And this month is jam-packed with campaigns vying for your attention to bring awareness to domestic violence, to prevent bullying, and to prevent suicide. All these topics are usually done individualistic, but at Luminous Minds Project, we see a correlation between all of them, and we're combining it all together to continue this conversation. It is awesome that it's October and we're just now kicking off with these YouTube videos to bring some real truth to learning disabilities. Often campaigns will talk about the function of our dyslexia, ADHD, or OCD, bipolar, but what is really important to talk about is the social emotional piece of that, not just the mechanics of how learning disability works, but I think what has been missing for a very long time, especially as someone that was diagnosed with a learning disability in the third grade, that I have been seeking to have conversations and see conversations around the social emotional piece of learning disability, and it seems like it's missed a lot. And we can talk about bullying, but we need to talk about bullying in the context of stigma and how those with learning disabilities or learning differences, as I like to say, combat psychological abuse every day. It in school is a landmine, constantly trying to navigate psychological abuse from bullies or going home to a really unsafe environment where you're also acquiring more injuries. That psychological abuse is invisible. Sometimes it can be really insidious and hard to know whether it's abuse or not. But invisible abuse creates invisible wounds, and those invisible wounds can manifest and create learning disabilities. And so we'll be talking a lot more about how that happens throughout these videos, throughout the month, so you can become a lot more self-aware around yourself, maybe your kid or your students, and how to identify what is a head trauma or really what is just a learning disability. Because the kids that I work with, they're one and the same, that they do have a learning disability, but they are acquiring trauma. They're acquiring invisible disabilities on top of their disability due to bullying and this old narrative around disabilities, this old thinking, this old belief system that ultimately harms us even in our domestic situation. That those with learning disabilities, ADHD, usually, or those that are neurodivergent, I must say, usually are the scapegoats within their family and definitely in society. So talking about abuse this month is key to really understanding the lived LD ADHD experience, or those with psychological injuries such as PTSD or complex PTSD. It is important to understand how getting diagnosed in the diagnostic process and understanding that not all medications work on every diagnosis. That once you are diagnosed and they're giving you medication and you're adverse to the medication and the medication's not working on you, they will consistently keep trying to change the medication to see if it sticks instead of looking and just saying, I wonder if there's an injury here, right? That a lot of these doctors and therapists are not trained in trauma-informed care. This is just now coming out. Therapists that are licensed therapists are trained maybe in relationships and growth and transition, life transitions. Not all therapists and counselors are trauma-informed or have a trauma-informed practice, which is really important to know as you are going through trying to find healing, rehabilitation, and finding the right answers and solutions to the way you think. This is why these campaigns are so epic and really important for the month of October. So we will be doing a lot more videos talking about the diagnostic process, talking about interpersonal relationships, and how to identify bully, how to identify a toxic personality type, and how do you self-protect from a narcissistic personality type, someone that's really abusive, that likes to play mind games, right? We have a lot of people in our society like to play mind games due to the fact of not knowing how to feel your feelings and communicate clearly. And this is really encouraged in higher academia, that everything is kind of to the surface and nothing is actually really spoken about or fleshed out. That is really important. So Luminous Minds Project is bringing everything to the surface and saying what is actually not being said, and how can we learn ways to better communicate about what we need, what we're feeling, so people know how to show up better. A lot of us are really going into spaces that are really toxic. That's why I love trauma-informed care and the possibility of that, because it will change culture. And what we don't need is these people that are wounded going into environments that are trauma-informed care without those people, ultimately those holding space, not knowing anything about trauma or knowing anything about themselves and their trauma. Because if they don't know anything about themselves, how are they ever going to show up for anybody else? This is why Luminous Minds Project is a self-developing company, due to the fact that we can talk and we can bring advocacy around learning disabilities all day long. We can talk about abusive personality types till we're blue in the face, but what's the solution here, and how do we change the behavior? And by offering up trauma-informed care, it really asks a lot of those holding that space. Being mindful of who's walking in the door, not just having assumptions about one particular person, but just assuming that everyone that's walking in that door comes with a story, comes with an experience, and comes with something heavy that they're carrying. And that space is really just lightening the load, making it safe, and saying, you're welcome here. This is a friendly, non-hostile environment that you can be in, right? That within higher academia, there is this ambiance that can get really insidious and abusive due to lack of communication. And so it's really important to communicate clearly with other people and knowing how to set boundaries when someone is trying to cross that line. And so we teach all those skills at Luminous Minds Project on coaching, and eventually, hopefully, we'll start doing webinars. So we'll teach you guys how to self-protect from abusive personality types, and how do you ward off a bully? What do you do when you have just been bullied, right? That post-care bullying. And those neurodivergent kids, man, you guys are warriors out there, constantly dealing with the microaggressions and the lack of knowledge and lack of consciousness around learning differences and the different styles of learning and the different abilities that we all need, right? That there's a lot of people that are hurt and wounded and like to take out their aggression on those that learn differently, because what we do, we offer up heart. We're heart-centered. So we're an easy target for someone that may be highly intellectually astute, that really lacks that heart-centered perspective, that likes to just be dominating and controlling and manipulative to get what they want. They actually get this sense of importance, and a lot of people strive to get their significance by manhandling someone or controlling them. And I just think it's a skill that we can learn that we're not being taught in our school system. And it's time. And that's why Luminous Minds Project here is to teach social, emotional, artistic skills to better socialize and interact and communicate. Really, we can sit in counseling and therapies a lot. And I have my fair share of going to therapy, and I love it. I'm a big advocate for therapy. I think we should normalize it to where everybody should at least go to therapy, because really what therapy does, it teaches you how to communicate, how to be in touch with your feelings, and how to express them in a healthy manner. Um, yeah, and how to socialize with other people that are different than you, and taking that emotional risk, right? So Luminous Minds Project, I hope, turns into kind of this school where people can kind of learn social emotional stuff, and they're leaning up against each other and bumping up against each other, and learning out loud, like um, around boundaries, and how to communicate, and how to do conflict resolution, and how to be in conflict with somebody, right, without just walking away, right? There's an art to conflict, and knowing to be in conflict and just being like, I need a minute, and going away and coming back when you have your perspective and you have your head straight, and then having that communication. It's just hard to leave therapy and be in a real situation with somebody and having to practice on them. That hopefully Luminous Minds Project, we're going to create these social emotional classes where you can come and learn. If you are going to therapy, awesome. I'm totally all about that. I would much rather deal and work with somebody and communicate with somebody that has a background in therapy, that has been in therapy, than to deal with somebody that has never had a day of therapy in their life, doesn't feel her feelings, and doesn't that's just not open to a new experience. I look at that as an assault weapon with legs, and I just am not willing to entertain it anymore. It's just ignorance, and it's a lack of wanting to evolve and update your education. I look at somebody like that doesn't want to work on themselves, go to therapy, or do any kind of self-improvement, as somebody that is dangerous, that will say something off the cuff and not take responsibility for it, or wound you and not show up and be accountable to putting that right, right? That we don't have to entertain that anymore, that we get to find ways to interact with people that are right and healthy. And what does that look like, right? And so I'm excited to do these videos, and I think I'm going to try and do several in this month for you guys. I probably will do them sporadic, just knowing me and how I function, because I'm working with creativity. So when you're working with creativity, you just go where it goes, where it's taking you. And sometimes I'll lose track as to the times and dates. I don't have a hard time not coming up with content. I have a hard time coming up with lots of content and knowing when to drop them. So I'm just learning that. #learning curve. So yeah, I think this month of conversations around domestic violence, suicide prevention, and bullying prevention is really important. And I will be asking people to come and talk with me. Who I really want to interview that I think you guys will really love is I think her name is Mary Angela, and she works for Faces of Fortitude, and she's a photographer that takes pictures of those that have attempted suicide or lost someone to suicide. And she has a big heart and just amazing soul that she lost her brother and found inspiration taking photos and just kind of creating a space for other victims of suicide to come and talk about their process and their recovery and their healing, which is so beautiful and amazing. And a lot of these stories and a lot of these guys come from backgrounds of domestic violence or really were bullied in school. So, I mean, it's just time to start talking about the things that we hold in and we're not talking about due to social stigma. But it's time. It's 2019, and we should be talking about the brain, and we should be talking about the effects of abuse on the brain, right? And all of that not having to deal on your own, that we can give life and breath and vocalize it and get it out. Because once you put voice and words and language to what hurts, that shame and that power of the shame just dissipates. It's almost like a spell. Boom. That's why I love spoken word poetry, because when I very first did my poem and I was talking, I think my very first poem was talking about um, racism. I really do think it was, yeah, I think it was that poem. Um, Oh yeah, that's what. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. It was about racism, and so right when I was so scared to say it out loud in front of a room full of people of color, full of really astute, academically, like really wicked intellectuals, going up there with my paper shaking. I'm like, oh, shaking and talking about racism. And when I got off the stage, man, the applause and the affirmation and the confirmation let me know, keep doing that. Keep talking, keep putting voice to what you're seeing in the world, keep dispelling the myths, keep, that abuse and that oppression creates silence. And when you're silenced, where does that energy and that emotion go? It does crawl into the body. It does. But for a lot of us, it crawls up to the mind and it stays really active. And the way to get it out is by verbalizing it or writing it or expressing it and getting it out. Or for me, if I'm not active in some kind of creativity, I literally shrink and I get tired, I get fatigued, and I need to talk and I need to express and I need to get it out. So at Luminous Minds Project, we talk a lot about telling your story and using your voice to break oppression and let these guys know, Donald Trump, who we are and where we're going. Because if we all stayed silent right now, we are literally in a domestic violence situation with our president. It goes from micro to macro. Micro interpersonal relationships is a Buddhist concept, right? Sorry, I just jumped really ahead of. So the micro is a small version of what is happening on a big scale, right? That we can have abusive interpersonal relationships, but it ultimately will be mirrored in our environment as well. So we look at our environment and we look to who's in charge right now, and this guy, our president, who is supposed to be like our dad of the country, is really abusive, and he's splitting it. He has his golden child, and then he has his scapegoats. Like once you understand the cycle of abuse and how abuse works, it's so easy to see it. It's so easy to see it. It's easy to call it out and be like, oh, I see what you're doing. You're splitting. You're going with the conservatives and making them your golden children and pushing everyone that is black, brown, immigrant, LGBTQ, or have some kind of neurodivergency moving out. So then you can kind of see like, oh, who fits into this good old boys club, right? And it's the same in school. It's the same in schools. How we're socialized in school is how we socialize in society. So we'll be looking a lot deeper, lifting up the skirt and just having a look and having a good old chat about it. Because I believe in not holding things in and just really talking it out and processing it out loud so you guys can see, how does this work? Because there is, as I said in my last video around generational karma and generational trauma, is that learning disabilities can be handed down generationally due to the abuse within that family system. That you are literally rewiring those genes to be genetically inclined, where you hand them down one generation to the next generation to the next, right? And this is where eugenics comes in. And we will do a whole video on eugenics, because those in power, like Donald Trump, really believed in eugenics, really believed in sterilizing those with learning disabilities and ADHD, or just learning disabilities or a learning difference, seeing us as inadequate. And that messaging is still happening. The abuse is in our collective, it's in our school, it's how we are how we're socialized. And so if we don't actually start talking about it and all we're doing is constantly saying, oh, I got a job, I opened my own business, I'm a rock star, look at me now, we are never, ever, ever going to change the narrative of learning disabilities and ADHD in this country. If we consistently keep making fun of it, keep making fun and light of it, or keep showing that we can overcome it, no, we just actually need to change the whole way of how we deal with it. So, and that's what I'm really interested in. I'm interested in the truth, and I'm interested in the root cause of the issue. And if we can get under it and create safe spaces for people to live and think and express and create and socialize and emote in a healthy way, that is what I'm invested in, and I really hope that you are too. So that is all I have for you today, and I hope you got something from it. I will keep dropping videos on domestic violence, bullying, suicide prevention, and learning disabilities. So I just ask that you stay curious and always keep an open mind. Peace.